Hi everyone, thanks for joining today. Today's webinar is going to be a NextChapter refresher. So we'll show you how to complete a case from start to finish in the app, go through some frequently asked questions, some of our hints to help make things easier for you, and then show you how to download your forms and file a case. So to get started, Mandy is going to walk you through how to start everything, take care of all of your simple client intake, and we will go from there.
Okay, so starting a case in NextChapter, you can do from your firm dashboard. So when you first log in, you're going to see the firm's dashboard here. And once you've started a case, you're going to see all of your recent cases in this list here. But to start your first case, it's as easy as putting in their first name and last name, selecting the district that you want to file in, and the chapter. And it defaults to doing a personal case. So if you're doing an individual or a joint debtor that's not filing as a business entity, you would choose personal. But if the business will be filing, you can choose business here. This is something that you will need to select before starting the case. It's not something that can be changed afterward, just because it is a different set of forms that we're using. So this is the one thing you'll need to make sure is set properly beforehand. But let's say if I am starting my case and I think it's going to start as a 7, and then later it's actually going to convert to a 13 or the other way around. Once we start the case, we can easily switch this. So once you have everything set in here, you can click Start Case. And we're actually going to hop into a case that's already been created. So once you're in the case here, you're going to start out in the case dashboard. And here on the side, you're going to see a navigation. So this is a really good way to go through the data entry on your case. We've set NextChapter up to be entered into a linear fashion to kind of prevent any unnecessary double or triple data entry. So if you start at the top and add information in, as you get to later sections of the forms, such as the means test and the SOFA, a lot of that information is already going to be entered in. And then hopefully at that point, all you're doing is making some tweaks or adjustments and not having to re-enter any information. So starting with the case dashboard here at the top, you can enter in the client's basic contact information. You can also, if you'd like, keep track of the status of the case. So if it's still a lead, you don't have this case yet, you can change it to in progress once you're ready to move forward. And when you change that, it actually changes up here in the header. And then it also changes in your full case list, which is a good way to keep track of all of your cases in NextChapter. You can also keep track of the referrals. And then here we have the IC date, which is your initial consultation date. When you add this date and the signing date, it actually adds over into the events tab here as a new event. And this goes onto the firm's calendar as well. So that's a nice way to keep track of any of the appointments that are coming up in this case. Down below that, we have a comments section. So this can be used in any way that you'd like for your firm. This is a great way for the support staff and the attorney to communicate as they're going through the case. Whoever I'm logged in as is what's going to tag. So I'm logged in as attorney Finch here, so it put that information and then the time that the comment was made. You can delete them out. Some people will use this to paste in correspondence that they've had with a client. So if there was a phone call or an email that the paralegal would like everyone working on the case to know about, you can add that in here, and then you'll have that documented in the case. And then there's also anywhere you see a NextChapter that has a little print button. We've got a couple different places that this is featured. It's going to turn this into a PDF for you. So this is nice if you want to create a PDF of any of the correspondences in the case, add it to the file, whatever you'd like, you do have that option. Then going back up here, so I showed where the events are here. We also have a document checklist. This is going to start off when you first sign up in NextChapter with a preset list of documents, and then next to that, tasks to complete within the case. So we've kind of created a generic list that we think would be helpful for most firms. But what you can do in your account settings is actually go to the account settings here, and you can change that default list for both documents and the tasks to fit how your firm's workflow is and the documents that you need. And then after you've sent that, that'll update all of your new cases to have those set lists. And then I can go in here and change this and edit these individually on a per case basis as well. Once I receive something, I can cross it off. And then once a task is completed, I can cross it off here too. You have the option to hide any completed tasks if you'd prefer to only see the pending tasks here. And again, there is the option to print. So there's that print button again. Same here in the documents. So this is nice if you've had an appointment coming up with a client, they still have a couple more items they need to bring in, and you want to leave them with a reminder. You can turn this into a PDF here. You can either email it to them, print it out, and then they can have a nice reminder when they go home of those additional documents that are needed. And then I mentioned the events here. So when I add in the initial consultation date, the signing date, later on, we have spots and filing information for the 341 date and then the confirmation hearing. If you are a pro or a WO user, or if you use NextChapter Notices AI, these dates automatically get added from the PACER notices that we're receiving from the court. If you're not using that, if you're on the per case or the GROW, you can actually add these in too. And again, those dates will get added into the event tab here. So you can see all the events that pertains to this case. Then back in the home dashboard, you have the firm's calendar. And I can change the view if I want to see the week or the day. And then I can go through and see any, all of the hearings or appointments, anything you'd like to put on the calendar, it's going to be available in here. So this again is the case dashboard is a good spot to kind of keep track of some general case information and where the status of the case, so anyone who logs in can quickly see the status. Here on the next section, we actually have the credit report where you can pull the report for your debtors. This is a process that you have to get set up. And as you can see on my account here, I'm not set up yet, and I can go into my settings to complete the application. Once you are approved, you do have to go through a process with the bureaus to get approved for that. We use Universal Credit Services as our credit reporting agency. But once you do that, you can actually pull the creditors directly into NextChapter. And you'll also have the option to omit any zero balances or unknown balances. And that's going to pull them directly into the schedules here. And then next, I'm going to go into kind of moving down the line into that filing information again. So really the best way to input information into NextChapter is to go through and answer each question. And the reason for that, instead of kind of cherry picking questions, there may be additional information you need to input that we're not showing here unless you answer the question. So for example, does the debtor have any property that needs immediate attention? If we say no, that's it, we move on because it's not pertinent to this case. But if we say yes, now it's going to ask us about that hazardous material and all the information that's going to go in there. And then also I wanted to point out here too, in the filing fee section, we do have the option to complete if your client is going to apply to pay the fees in installments. You would need to select that here. So what that's going to do is mark that into how the case is going to be filed, and then also in the petition. And then if you would like us to help you generate that application, you can complete this information here to indicate the different fees, when they're going to be paid. And when I save that, that actually saves a copy of it for later on when I'm ready to file the case. I went to additional documents and client document storage. And we'll get into this section a little later, but I wanted to show that that does save here and that you can access it in that section here too. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Katie to talk to you about adding in the property.
So moving down the line, as Mandy mentioned, that it was built to really work in a linear format because there's a lot of places you will just have to enter the information in one time. So for example, when you're ready to add property, that would be added in debtor addresses. We must have a residential property for the credit report if you're integrated with that, and as well as the means test. So when you're adding an address here, there is going to be a type from this dropdown. Rental indicates it's a rental property, an owned rental property. If it's residential and rented, you would select residential and say that your client rents that property. Otherwise, you can select own or neither. Up here, for the basic address information, we must have a county. It is required, so you can't move on without saving that, but that's how we're going to get those means test figures to compare the median income when you get down to the means test tab. You'll notice if we put in an address that is a residential address and your debtor owns it, when you save that, now when you continue on, enter your prior names, your spouses, when you're down to real property, properties owned, it's going to be in there. So when you've told the app that this is a property, they own this, it will be ready and in the correct spot by the time you get there. When you're adding property, anytime you add a property, you're going to have the basic information here. So this is basically for just real property and vehicles owned. There's an option here to add a lien. So you can add this lien to the property, especially if you haven't imported a credit report. However, if you have imported the credit report, the easiest thing to do is just enter in this basic property information and then go find that lien and tie this back to the asset. So if I know I pulled the credit report, it's probably it's a secured claim. Here it is. Each secured claim has an asset drop down. So when I edit that claim, I have an asset drop down here. This asset drop down will have any assets that you've already entered in as property. So now I can choose, there's my mortgage, the Apple Core Alley, and I save it. When I return to real property and properties owned, there's a lien attached to it. If I edit this, the lien is in here, and you can click on any of these fields with hyperlinks, they'll expand. So it pulled over the creditor, the balance, the monthly payment, who it belongs to. So all of that would really just, you don't have to data entry this if you're pulling credit reports. The most important thing to note though about this field right here, if you are working on a 13 and you have the 13 plan package, make sure to say, is this a mortgage, yes or no? When you say yes, then we can now classify that as secured real estate rather than a secured asset. Same thing goes for vehicles. When you're working in a vehicle owned, if you just add the vehicle, go find the lien and tie it back to this asset, it's also pulling in all of that information, the balance, everything. So long as your intent is not to surrender, we will automatically move this over into expenses and we'll put it on Schedule J. So if I have this vehicle entered in here, when I get down to my expenses tab and I'm working on the vehicles, there's my car payments. You can review the claim still to make sure, okay, we said we're redeeming this. There's the balance, the monthly payment, but that's one place where you can enter in that property, the vehicles, and that's basically the only time you have to enter it. The only difference would be a leased vehicle. So if you're adding a vehicle, since that lease isn't going to be imported, add the lease directly to the vehicle. By doing that, it ties the two together. So here's an example. I have the lease in there. The amount, the payment, still, again, if I'm assuming this, it's going to Schedule J. And then by the time I get down to Schedule G, it will already be in there. When you're pulling the credit reports, everything will import directly to Schedule F, except for a mortgage and a vehicle. That will go directly to Schedule D. If you need to move these for some reason, it's super easy. Each claim section has options to move within. So if I move that to E, it's already in E. There it is. Move it back to F and so on. So it's really easy to organize those. Also, when you're working on these, and especially when you're tying claims together and property, we have an orange preview button at the top right that anytime you click this, it'll take you to preview your forms. It will default to the section you're working on. So I was in secured claims. It's going to automatically show me Schedule D, but feel free, you can click between any of these and just see where the information is going. So if you want to see that lease, go ahead and click Schedule G and so on. If it takes a second to load, it's because it's writing that PDF in real time. So just give it a couple seconds. And now we can see there's our IRS claim and the rest of the claims we had imported from the credit report as well.
Okay, so as you're adding in the property, another thing that you can do, so Katie showed tying those liens for any of those secured assets, but when you go into real and personal property, you can also save in the exemption if there's going to be one for that property as well. So it's the same as adding in the lien if you were going to do it directly through the property. For real property and for the vehicle, you would simply edit the property, click add lien. And then what's nice is we give you an option to search it, so I could start typing in. And then generally we'll show you towards the top what it's most likely going to be. So this is real estate. The homestead exemption is showing here. We show you the limit for that. And then for the jurisdictions that do allow it, we have the option for you to double the limit. If this was a joint case and your jurisdiction allowed them to be split as well, you would see that same checkbox in this section here. And that's going to adjust all of those for you. As you add in the exemptions for any of your secured items, we do have an asset calculator here. So it's going to show you any equity in the property, and it's also going to reduce out those exemptions and see any amount that's unexempt here. And this updates in real time, so you can kind of use that to play around and to get the figures to exactly what you want them to be. When you go to the personal property and get into personal items, pretty much personal items all the way down, this is organized by the category at the top. You can add in each category as many times as needed. If your court just wants to have all items listed in one sum, so let's say all household items, and it's not a joint case, and you're going to be, you're not going to be splitting up those exemptions. You would literally just add it in once, put in the amount, and then you can also save in any exemption right here. If it is a joint case, you do have the ability to save in each category multiple times and then indicate if it's debtor 1, debtor 2, or both debtor 1 and debtor 2. If you do it in that way, when you go to preview, you'll notice that Schedule C is going to be split into 2 Schedule Cs. So if your jurisdiction does this, you probably already know it does it. If this sounds strange to you, then yours probably doesn't do it. So some of them do split up that Schedule C so that they can see which exemptions are going to be for the debtor 1, debtor 2, and for both. If you see that it's split and you don't want it to be split, when you work on the asset here, you'll see an option in this section. Just make sure that they always say debtor 1 and debtor 2. If all exemptions are for debtor 1 and debtor 2, then there will only be one Schedule C. As you go through and save all of your property and the corresponding exemptions, you're going to see a table view, or I should say a tree view. You can minimize if you'd like, if you want to see each of the categories. So I can hit the plus and minus signs to expand these. And that's going to total everything here, and you can see any amounts remaining. Then we also show all of the categories together in the property analysis. The property analysis is going to list all assets that have been added to the case. It's going to show in these columns the value, liens, equity, exempt, and then unexempt amount here. Then at the bottom, you'll also get totals for this. What's nice is that you can update the values directly from this section, and that will actually update the value of the asset back in the personal property section. And you can also, we had a request because this section has pretty good information giving you the totals down here, especially if you're looking for the Chapter 7 liquidation amount. You can print this. So again, that print button is going to create a PDF for this. Some people provide this to their trustees so that they can get a high-level view of all the assets in the case. And it also totals at the bottom here for you. If there are any exemptions that you need to override in Schedule C, you can click on this blue wrench right here. So when I click that I do want to override, I can choose 100% of the fair market value. I can choose unknown or other. If I select other, that whatever I type here is what's going to go directly into Schedule C for me. Moving back to the claims section, one thing that is commonly used is adding any type of, if you need to list a lawsuit that's connected to a claim. So instead of doing that later on and adding in the creditor and all the asset information again, you can actually edit the claim if this creditor was a part of an action that needs to be listed in the Statement of Financial Affairs. So for example, Apple Core Mortgage here, if I edit, Down here, I have the option to add an action if I want to indicate that Apple Core Mortgage is involved in a lawsuit or a pending action with the debtor. When I do that, it will start off like this, to where I can go through and choose what type of action it is. And if it's a foreclosure, then if it's something that I want to show on both lines 10 and line 9 of the SOFA, I can check this box. Now it's going to ask me for all the court information. And then what's nice, we have the option for you to save in common courts. So if I type this court in for the very first time, and this is a court that I regularly am listing in the SOFA, I can check the box here to save it as a common court. Then the next time I add an action and I need to access this court's information again, I just start typing in Jefferson. It'll pull up all the information and save it in here for me. So you really should only have to enter it the first time, and then you're going to have that court saved for all your future cases. And then everyone else in the firm will have access to those as well. Then once you have all of your actions saved, you can actually see them all later on in the lawsuit section, which is just after the claims. So we will list out any of all the lawsuits that you've already entered. You can add lawsuits directly in here too. So if you have a suit that needs to be listed in the SOFA that doesn't pertain to a creditor, you would add it directly in here. So it looks like this one here isn't connected to a creditor. So this would be like a pending divorce or personal injury suit. Those could be added directly into this section. And then the next section below that is the executory contracts. So as Katie mentioned, if it is a vehicle, you would add that up here in the vehicles leased. And then by the time you get to this section, it's already going to be listed. If you have any additional contracts that need to be listed here, if you've got a cell phone contract, residential lease contract, you can add them, timeshares as well. You can add it directly into this section. You do want to make sure that you mark the intent on the lease. This is especially important for your Chapter 13 cases so that we know how to apply the lease within the plan as well. And then also down here, you'll need to indicate the type of lease. So for Chapter 7, this is important. For the statement of intent, we need to know if it's real estate, if it's for a vehicle, or if it's for something else.
Okay, continuing on to co-debtors, insiders, and notices. These are pretty self-explanatory. They can be added, co-debtors and notices can be added directly to the co-debtors and notices section, or they can also be added on any of the claims. So whenever you're editing a claim, you can add a notice address down here, and you can also add a co-debtor. One thing to note for co-debtors, if you're adding a co-debtor, and I'll just put myself quickly, if you're adding the same co-debtor to each case, you can save as a common co-debtor to this case. So when I save as a common co-debtor, if you have to add the same information to another claim, once this is saved, it'll be saved from this dropdown, and then I can just choose this common co-debtor. Normally the address, all of that would be filled in. This is one of the few common functionalities that saves to only this case. It's not going to save firm-wide and work as a common creditor would. So that's a nice way to be able to save a lot of time. So you can just select that from the dropdown, especially in those community property states where you're adding it over and over again. You can also omit from a creditor matrix too. And then, like I said, you can add them directly to the co-debtor section here by just adding a new co-debtor and then selecting which creditor it applies to. Insiders, this is where you can add a new insider for the SOFA. And then notices here. So if you haven't added a notice directly to a claim, you can come add a new notice in here. If you have notice addresses that you're adding regularly, so the IRS, for example, that you're adding to almost every single case, when you are in your account and account settings, in adding your common and default creditors, there's going to be a checkbox, and that checkbox says default creditor. If you check that box, that creditor will always be listed in this notices section for all of your cases. So you can still edit them, delete them if you need to, but rather than entering something in every single time, that's an easy way to just default that. The next section is the income section. So when you're working in income, you can start by entering full or part-time employment or self-employment. If it's a non-filing spouse or a joint debtor, it does not matter. You can choose this spouse selection. So we get asked that pretty often. We know based on the type of case, the marital status, what to do with that income. So again, whether it's a joint debtor or a non-filing spouse, just indicate spouse and it will be applied correctly. We do have a webinar on here that you can watch that goes a little more in depth about income and expenses. But just to show you briefly, when you're entering in the income, you'll notice an income calculator here. So as long as you're giving us the frequency and then telling us the type, so whether you want to enter in all pay advices for the last 6 months, just one pay advice if they're salaried and more consistently paid, or do the year-to-date subtraction, we'll do all of the calculations for you. So we'll determine that gross income for the means test, and then we'll do the net income as well as all the deductions for Schedule I. Each of these items and selections has this orange question mark. You can click on that and view our Help Center article. So this Help Center article is going to take you through a step-by-step process on how exactly to use the all pay advices option. So we're showing you, make sure you save it, how to put on Schedule I, what you want on Schedule I, and so on. Recently, we have added in, let me go to the all pay advices option. So automatically, it's going to use the deductions for the means test from your Schedule I pay advice. But there is an option in here now if you want to use the 6-month average for means test deductions. So like it says here, we're going to default to using those Schedule I deductions. But if you have one of those districts that wants an average, just check this box. And then it's going to average all the deductions from all of these pay advices for Schedule I. For non-employment income, same thing. When you're adding this, you have those same 3 methods. So the all advice is just one or a year to date. The only difference in here is that you can exclude it from I if you want to. And then just make sure you select the correct type. This correlates to the line that it's going on Schedule I. And there's other things too, like for example, if it's Social Security, we'll automatically exclude that from the means test per those forms instructions. So again, just make sure you're selecting the correct type of income. And then gross yearly income, this is for the SOFA. We get asked a lot, what if they had multiple sources of income? Per the SOFA instructions, it tells you to combine them. So you're going to see one, you can add new non-employment income and sources, but for the gross income over here, following the form's instructions, just combine them. One other thing you can do too, if you're working in income, you can save companies as a common company. That'll save the company to your firm settings. And then like as I start to type in FedEx, it'll pull all of that information in. So that's another place you can save a common company and just reduce some data entry and have that correct company address at all times. After you've entered in the income and you move on to expenses, there's a really nice in-app calculator down here at the bottom right. So we're showing you that income that you've entered on I, and then as you add and remove expenses, it's going to update in real time. So if I remove this mortgage, my balance just went up $3,000. If I add it in, it goes down. So this is helpful too on a Chapter 13. We'll take this balance here, so it's about $360, and plug it into your Chapter 13 plan calculator. So down here, there's $360 in this current income from J. So we're just showing you what your plan, what they can afford for their total plan payment each month. Back to expenses though, everything with an orange dot here means it's going to Schedule J. There are a few things on here in the family tab. So like cost of care for ill, protection against family violence. If these don't have an orange dot next to them, it's because it is an expense that can be deducted from the means test. So you will see these figures in this education expense, you will see these on the means test. If you have another expense, you can add those here and then just specify exactly what they are, and that'll go directly on J. As I mentioned earlier, the vehicles will automatically be in here. So you can review all of those claims, whether it's owned or leased, as long as it's not being rejected or surrendered, those will be listed in here. But in those instances where maybe you have a non-filing spouse's car payment, you can still add another. So you can add new car payments that don't tie directly to a claim. The next section on here would be the miscellaneous section, and this is important for your attorney fees. So this section has two separate sections to it. The bottom section is only for the attorney fee disclosure. So this is what you've set up in your settings tab, and you can select your disclosure statement language from there. You can still make specifications as well. And then if you need to add retainer fees, you can do so as well. Otherwise, it's going to default to a flat fee that you've entered down here. So this difference of what the attorney fees are and what the client has paid, this is also that $1,000 will automatically go into your Chapter 13 plan. This has nothing to do with the SOFA line 16. That is done up here. So if you are adding a new fee here, the easiest thing to do is just save yourself or your attorney as a common creditor, because then this was Attorney Finch earlier. As I start to type in their name, it's going to pull in that information, and then I'll just put in their recent payment date here. And again, this is going on the SOFA and is unrelated to the fees on the attorney disclosure.
Okay. So quickly going through the miscellaneous here, we do have the options. It's pretty self-explanatory to add in gifts and losses for the SOFA. If there's any environmental hazards that need to be reported, those can be here. And then any business-related items can be added here as well. Next, we have the SOFA review. So as I mentioned, all of the questions for the SOFA are actually asked throughout NextChapter. We place them in the spots that make a little bit more sense, directly related to the topic that you're working on. And then once you get to the SOFA review, this is a nice check to go through. We list all of the questions from the SOFA. We show you what information's been entered based on how you have it in NextChapter. We also give you a revisit button. So if there's something in here that we see how it's being applied to the SOFA, if I want to revisit and change that information, I can click revisit spouse and dependents. It takes me here, and now I can change that information so that it's reflected differently in the SOFA. Next to each question, we also have the orange information bubbles here. And what's nice is some of these buttons will take you back to a section, but it won't necessarily tell you how to enter that in. So as I go through, if there's a section that I want to add in, but I can go back to the secured claims, but that doesn't necessarily tell me how to add a lawsuit to be listed on line 9. If I want to see more details on how to do that, I can click on the orange bubble. This is again going to open up our help center, and it's going to bring up an article specific to that line on the SOFA. So it'll tell me the question, and then it'll have a little tutorial to show me exactly how to do it. So not only do you go to the secured claims, you click action and select what type of action, and I can see that here. So now I know how to put it in. All the questions are listed here in tabs at the top, so you can go down the line and see how all the information is being completed and revisit any if necessary. Next is the means test. If it is a Chapter 7, you can indicate if there is any exemption from the presumption of abuse. So that would either be disabled veteran, or if it's a National Guard or reservist, you can say yes on those and enter the information accordingly. And then we would add that into the supplemental form. Another thing that ties into this form is if you have indicated in the filing information that the nature of debt is primarily business, that's another exemption. So if you have that here, when you would click on preview, you would see that supplemental form included, and then they wouldn't be required to complete the means test. But this is a Chapter 13, so it's not as relevant. So I went to the next section here, which is the means test qualifier. This is where we're going to take the income that you've already entered and determine the annual income, and we're going to compare based on the residential state and the number of people that live in the household, which is all prior entered in the client profile to determine the median family income. And down here is the important part. That's where you're going to check to see if there is or isn't a presumption of abuse. If you have a red thumbs down, you'll see instructions to continue to complete the means test because the presumption of abuse has arisen. So meaning the debtor's annual income is higher than the median family income. If there was a green thumbs up, we actually wouldn't even see this next section, the means test questions, and it would say no need to complete the means test. So if you were to edit the income, this section could change because we are going to update the income here and apply those values to compare to see. So you would want to come back here if you do make any updates to the income to see if there is a presumption of abuse. When you preview the forms, we are only going to show you the forms that apply to this case. So here you can see that the Chapter 13 statement of current monthly income and the disposable income is being included because there was a presumption of abuse. If there was no presumption of abuse, you wouldn't see this form in here because it doesn't apply. So that's a good way to see as well. So next, we do need to proceed on to the means test questions. This is where we can go through and add any additional deductions to be applied into the means test. It's very important to answer this question here. We do need to know how many people can be claimed as exemptions on the federal tax returns that are under 65 and over 65. This figure here is how we calculate the IRS national standards. We do also need to have, if I had not added in the residential address yet, I would see a message up top here telling me to do so, because then that's going to prevent us from applying in any of the local standards. The idea with the means test questions, it's similar to the statement of financial affairs. We want to pull everything over here for you and then give you the tools to change it if needed. So we actually are going to, for example, bring over all the applicable expenses from Schedule I and J, but you do have the option to override. So if I say yes, this is going to show me all of the monthly deductions from the pay advices, and it's going to show all of those expenses that didn't have the orange dot next to them, which were expenses that are going to be applied into the means test. So for example, we know there are some districts that do want to see the current income for, or I'm sorry, the current deduction or expense for the daycare babysitter, but on the means test, they want to see what the last 6 months was. So if I want it to be different than Schedule J, I can simply override and type in a different amount. And now this, any changes I make in this section, it does not change any of this information back in the income or expense section. So Schedule I and J will remain the same. It will only update the means test. So this is for you to tweak the means test as needed to apply these figures as you'd like. And then down here, you can also add in any future payments on debts due in 60 months. You would want to, these default to choosing the type, but you can change these if you need to. And if needed, you can remove any of these from the means test as well. More kind of one-off situations, but they are possible. You will need to, we do have an amortization tool. I don't know if I said that right, that you can use here to amortize, I can say that, the loan. So we don't automatically do that, but it is very simple to add in the loan amount, interest rate, and then the number of years. So adding in the 5 years, and that's going to give you that figure, which can be plugged in here. So we have a little reminder to remind you to do that and to put that in here for the means test. If you had any arrearages on any of these secured liens, those cure amounts will be listed here as well, and then that'll divide out for the monthly cure amount. Okay, so next we're going to go down to calculation and presumption. That's the next section in the means test. So after we've applied in our additional deductions, we're going to recalculate with those deductions to see if there's still a presumption of abuse. And we can also, in this section, add any additional special circumstances if needed. And then if there's going to be any change in income or expenses that's expected, you can add that in here as well. Below that is the Chapter 13 section. So this is an additional add-on. You can file and prepare Chapter 13 cases through NextChapter, but to have the Chapter 13 plan calculator and the editor, that is an additional $250 a year per district. What's nice is if you file in multiple districts, if you purchase this package for one district, you will get the calculator for all of your districts. What would vary is going to be the plan. So if I wanted to purchase multiple plans for multiple districts, I would need to pay $250 per plan, and then I would have access to each one of these. Since this is an add-on, not everybody uses it. Some people, still prefer, maybe they don't file enough cases, or they still prefer to prepare these outside of the plan. We do have a specific webinar that goes over the preparation of the plan and using the calculator. But just generally speaking, with this calculator, we do pull over all of the claims. So you can see all of the assets here. You can go in and add specific treatment for each item. And what's nice is it will actually, if I change the treatment to say I want to pay this vehicle outside the plan, when I close that, down here at the bottom, it recalculates in real time for me. So you can adjust the plan length, the trustee's fee, and then it's going to pull over those attorney fees. All that information is pulling over, so it actually is a huge time saver as opposed to using, what a lot of people would use different calculators and Excel sheets. This stuff's going to automatically be in here for you, and you can easily adjust your unsecured percentage and see what that monthly payment is, and then you can also adjust your monthly payment and see what that does to the unsecured percentage as well. And then once you've adjusted your calculations, you can generate the plan in here.
Okay, the next section is additional documents. So in additional documents, we'll start with the court forms library. These are forms that we have taken directly from your court site. Unless you see the ability to create them at the top, they're not being, or to create them down here, they're not being auto-completed at this time. We're adding them as we see them become more relevant, and we're watching and seeing how many people file and what's filed consistently. There's a lot that don't get used all of the time, so they're not all in there. But if you do happen to be in a district and you can see that in this in this court forms library, we have the ability to create the declaration of evidence of employer's payments. We would come in here, click on the create. It's going to generate all of the questions that are asked on the form, save to client document storage, and now it's going to save a copy of that local form down here in client document storage. So here's the declaration of evidence. I can come to the right and view it. And you'll see we put in the debtor name, the chapter, and then at the bottom, the signature and the date, as well as any information that you have put in there. So if you don't see the option in here, you can just download the form, fill it in, and file it with the court. There's also the application to pay filing. The fees and installments is up there for all of the districts. But the next tab here is client document storage. So this does a couple of things. First, you can upload documents that you want to file with your case. You can also just have document storage. So if you want to be able to have all of your users be able to access all of this client's documents from anywhere at any time, upload them in here, and then you can come in here and view any of them. The event codes are what we currently have the ability to file with your case at the time of the filing. So if you don't see an event code, it's likely that we're adding to those too, but you can't just file it. You can't just merge it in with your packet and file it. It will have to be filed as an event code to be filed correctly. So for this example, we do have the declaration of evidence of employer payments. So all I need to do now is attach that event code to this document. And when we're in the review and file tab, this document will be attached and ready to file. Let's say we have the credit counseling certificate. That's up here. So we've uploaded that. So I'll do the same for that. And then anything else like this disclosure of compensation, that's a NextChapter generated form. So you don't have to re-upload that. That will be ready to go on the review and file page. We'll walk you through that process, but this would just be any of those outside forms that you want to file with your case or just store. Then you'll have your firm created forms. These are just forms that you've uploaded in settings to keep readily accessible. your PACER notices. If you are on the Pro plan or if you have purchased Notices AI, we will save all of your one free looks in here. That way you don't have to keep paying to view them. They'll automatically be in here. I can click on here and there's my meeting of creditors is saved in here. You can download from here as well, and it's pretty quickly done. Like the second we start receiving these notices, they'll be in here almost immediately. So definitely if you're not on that Pro or WO plan, look into Notices AI. It's a great time-saving feature. The next tab in here is just your download history. So when you go to download a petition, it's going to merge all of those forms, rewrite them, save them. So it's just nice to be able to come in here and re-download quickly or view them without having to wait for that whole merge to happen again. Download and print. So once you're ready to download your forms, you're going to have 3 columns in here. So the first one is going to be your available forms and documents. This is going to have anything you've uploaded. So if you want to download those with the petition, you can. And then it's going to have all of the NextChapter generated forms. And you can tell they have a different icon in here. So these are things we've uploaded ourselves to client document storage. And these are the forms NextChapter has generated for you. Anything in the middle will be merged and printed as your PDF packet. And then anything in the right are going to be printed separately. So first, you will need to generate a statement of Social Security number. We do not store the full social on anywhere in the case, and this is not a form that is generated or filed automatically. The TXT file, however, is filed automatically with your case when you file through NextChapter. It's just in here if you ever want it. So if you want to download a copy of that, you can. If you don't want to download it, you can just hit the trash can icon and it goes away. So for this specific example, I'm not worried about my petition right now. I just want to download the statement of Social Security. Continue to download, enter in that social, and then click download. So I'm going to save this just to my desktop because we can file this with your case if your district requires that. Some don't require that. So click on the orange bar. And then I'll just save this to my desktop quickly as the SSN form, and then come back to NextChapter and say complete. Back to the Forms tab, let's say you do want to print your petition. The easiest thing to do from this middle dropdown is just say you want to download the complete petition. It's going to move over all of those forms into the middle column. So this is all getting downloaded as my packet. These are getting downloaded, but they're going to be downloaded separately. If there were forms you uploaded, like maybe at the end, your client's coming in, you want them to see what else you're downloading, you can just drag those in. You can reorder things, you can remove things, you can do anything you want with this. Let's say maybe you, for some reason, you want AB separate. If you click to add additional PDF packet and move anything over here, now AB will download separately. It won't be merged in. People ask all of the time, why do I have to keep entering the social? It's because the system thinks it's generating a statement of Social Security. If you don't want that right now, delete it. Let's say we don't want the TXT file either. It'll stop asking you for that. If you're in one of those districts where you need wet signatures, you can click to remove signature lines, and now all of the signature lines on your download will be blank. One other thing you can do in here is download amended forms. So from this same middle dropdown, there's an amended option. So go through your case, make any changes that you need to, and then come to download and print, click amended forms, and then anything you drag in the middle here will be downloaded with the amended mark on it. So maybe you just amended Schedule D and EF. So now again, we don't need a Social Security right now or a TXT file. Now this way that I have it set up right now would only download an amended D and EF merged together as one file. There's just a couple other options in here too. So maybe you just want the emergency filing forms. That'll just pull over the basic 3 emergency filing forms and then signature pages only. So if you're looking for those forms, those schedules that have signature pages, that's always an option in here as well. And when you're on download too, if you know like your client's not coming until tomorrow, you can change the date on here. So if you want to move it to a date in the future, you can do so from here as well. You also, you have unlimited downloads. So you're only charged once per case. Whether you're downloading or filing, whichever you're doing first is when you will pay for your case, but then you can come back in and download as many times as you'd like, and you will not be charged again.
Okay, so once you've downloaded the forms, you have the client review and sign everything, and it looks good and you're ready to file. We can proceed to down below download and print, the orange review and file button. So if you are ready to file, and if your district does require the statement of Social Security, as Katie mentioned, you do want to make sure you have a copy of that form already downloaded and saved to your desktop here. And then you can go to review and file. The first section here is a review, just to make sure that we have everything we need so that we can file the case with the court. So this is kind of the bare minimum that we need to be able to open that case. And you would be filing the initial case with the court for this. Right now, we are only set up to file the initial case, but here, very, very, very soon, we will be releasing the ability to file amendments and supplemental forms in cases that are already filed with the court. We're rolling that out on a per district basis, and we'll be putting notes in the system once a district is able to do that. But for now, you are only able to file this initial case, and then later you'll be able to file those amendments in here, so keep an eye out for that. So if you need to add any information or change anything, you would have a red X and a little bit more text in here telling you what's missing, and you can use the revisit button to change any of that information if needed. But if I have all green check marks, I can click on Assemble PDF Packets. From here, we have 3 columns. So the first column is going to show you all available forms and documents that can be filed with this case. So it's pulling in all of the standard schedules and statements. And then it's also going to show any of the documents that you uploaded in the client document storage. If you assigned an event code to any of these, to the documents in client document storage, they'll actually already be listed over here. So it kind of took care of that step for you. And we'll get to that in a second. So the second column here is going to be your petition packet filed with the court. So your voluntary petition. Here is the easiest way to kind of set this up. If you are doing a complete bankruptcy petition and you want to have all schedules, all statements, pretty much all the forms that you see when you click on the orange preview button, if you want to file that as a singular PDF with the court, then you can click that there. It pulls them all over into the standard order. If you need to reorder any of them, you can just simply drag and drop. And this is the order that it's going to be in the PDF that's filed with the court. Then in the third column, you can add any additional forms to be filed separately from this petition. So again, if you saved in the credit counseling certificate and you assigned it that event code back in the client document storage, you'll automatically see that form listed here. There may be an additional question. So if it's a joint case, we may need to indicate if you're filing them separate or together. And so as you scroll through, you might see some additional questions. And then in this dropdown, we can do any additional events. So there are some jurisdictions that don't want the forms to be filed in that single PDF packet like how we have it now. So for example, this district may want to have the attorney disclosure of compensation filed separately. So if I want to remove that, I can click on that event. It adds it to the top here. And I need to find that document. So here's the attorney disclosure of compensation. I can drag and drop it over. So now it's going to be filed as its own separate docketed event with the court, not with this petition. If this is how I file all of my documents, and I always have to have it separated like that, the easiest thing to do is to go down here and click on Save a New Filing Template. So once it's set to how I always file it, so I have this pulled over and it's separate, I can save the filing template, and I can call this my Chapter 13. I don't think I typed that. And it gets saved in there. And then you'll see all of those templates in here. So if I select that, it even changes the order of them. So when you come in to file another case, it's going to change that order based on those templates you have saved in here. So you can save those from here. You can also edit them and view them from your settings too. So there's some districts that have very that really divide out this packet, that's the fastest thing to do, is to set it up once, go here and save it as a template. And then when you come back in to file your case, you'll just need to select that previously saved template here. And that's how it's going to file with the court. This district, I believe, I'm actually going to change our district really quick here, because this district does not file the statement of Social Security. And if yours doesn't, there's most likely not going to be that event code there. If yours does, I'll quickly show you how to do that. So again, you'll need to have that PDF saved to somewhere on outside of NextChapter, because you will have to browse to find that. So when I come in here, again, if I use one of my templates, did that for me automatically. I didn't have to redo all of that information. And then if I'm also filing the statement of Social Security, this one does look a little different. This is one that you cannot drag and drop into. If I do, it's actually going to add to this event down here. Because again, we don't store that form in NextChapter because it does contain the debtor's full Social Security number. So if you have it saved somewhere secure on your computer, you would just click Choose Files, find that form, and upload it. So once I did that, I can see that the PDF is saved here. And what's nice is you will have the opportunity to preview the filing beforehand to make sure that you did select the correct form and that everything's set as you would like. So now we can go to File. It's going to make sure that I assembled my packet properly and that I'm ready to file. Here, the required information to file with the court is that you do need to select the division. This one's easy. There's only one for the meeting of creditors. And then you also need to enter in the debtor's full social. So once you have these in here, you can also click to preview the filing. This is a nice step to make sure you did assemble your packet properly. I can click this arrow and it'll actually minimize. And I can see everything that's being filed. So here is the petition. I can go through and see each of the individual forms in the order that they're in. I can also come in and see the SSN form to make sure it's properly uploaded in this section, and I can go through each additional event that's being filed individually as well. So if everything looks good here, then you can proceed to start the ECF filing. And what will happen is that we will actually show a progress bar letting you know that we are filing with the court. Once you click on this button, the filing has started and you cannot stop it. So closing out of the progress bar doesn't stop the filing because we actually go behind the scenes, connect directly to the court site, and upload that case for you. So you do want to make sure when you click on this that you are in fact ready to file the case. Then another thing too is that you don't have to keep that progress bar up. So if you would like to work on another case or would like to do something else, you can actually close out and we will still send you an email letting you know when it's been filed, and we'll actually provide links with copies of all the files as they were forms as they were filed as well. At any time that you're working in NextChapter, if you have any questions, we do have a chat feature here by clicking on this orange smiley face in the bottom corner. What's nice is this actually brings up a search option, which will search our help center. So that's a nice first stop to check for a question that you have that maybe someone else has already had. So we have a lot of articles in our help center, and it may be helpful to search here, and it may find the answer for you without having to reach out. But if you did have anything that you needed to chat with us about, you can click on New Conversation here and send a message directly to us. What's nice is that this gives us the ability to see where you're at in the application, and then we can also send any support materials with more of a visual element as opposed to like on the phone. It's sometimes a little bit easier to kind of see how things are done instead of kind of explaining it. But if you also had any questions you wanted to call us, you can feel free to do so as well. But this kind of is a little bit more effective in how we can better assist you. If you wanted to access some of our other support materials, you can always click on Help. And there's the Help Center. As I mentioned, this is searchable. When you first go to it, we have all the articles listed into categories here. So if you're just getting started, you want to learn about setting up your firm, you can go through all those articles here. We have all of our prior webinars saved in this section if you want to watch those. And then these are all broken down by different categories. And then Another option too, you may have already done this, but to signing up in the webinar, there is a link to sign up for any of our upcoming webinars. This is going to include sales, which are a little bit more high level, and then the customer success, which are going to be more detail specific with using NextChapter. And then lastly, we do have training videos as well. So if you want to go through and see any of our videos that are pretty quick that show some specific topics, you can go through. These can be helpful for you as you're working your way through your first couple of cases in NextChapter. Okay, and I think that's it. I don't see any questions in the chat. If you did have any other questions after today or as you're getting started, again, please feel free to use the chat. Let us know. We'll be happy to help. And then take a look at some of our other upcoming webinars. Feel free to sign up for those, and we'll dive into some other different topics in those too. Thank you.